Martins Ferry head coach Justin Kropka joins hometown huddle. Weirton Madonna no longer has a football team. Beallsville no longer has a high school. And some scrimmages took place over this past weekend. All of that and more coming up on tonight's episode of Hometown Huddle.
All the way to the house. And it's going to be a St. Clairsville touchdown. First play of the game. Hello, touchdown Huskies. Wide open. Touchdown Ohio Valley.
Welcome in to the show. I'm your host, as always, Drake Watson. This is Hometown Huddle on this beautiful August 13th evening amidst an ecstatic Cadiz, Ohio. We're all excited. High school football is back in just 8 days. All of the things that I talked to you about on the previous episodes, you can start to feel. I can hear the snares of the marching band right now as we speak, as we're just 8 days away from high school football in the Ohio Valley. Everybody's heart rate is kind of accelerated as we get so close to kicking the thing off in just 8 days in Ohio, and what would that be, 15 days in West Virginia. So we're excited about all of that. Justin Kropka, the Martins Ferry head coach, takes us inside the huddle in mere moments. As that segment rolls on and that continues, he was kind enough to make the trip to the studio, so we're looking forward to talking to him. But before we do that, I wanted to remind you to like the video, do all those things that I'm going to talk to you about later. Leave a comment. There's going to be some things where I'm going to ask you your thoughts on some things, so I want to encourage you to keep the conversation going after the show is over. But before we do that, I wanted to paint this picture in your mind. I feel like we've been on a plane recently, and we're landing soon, thankfully. And I felt like during last week's show, we were kind of 30 minutes away from landing, and the guy comes on and he says, "We've begun our descent." And that's where I felt like we were last week. You could start to feel the plane lose altitude in a good way. And then between last show and this show, I felt like we've made our way through the turbulence that is the last lower layer of clouds. And now, as you and I sit here tonight, we can see the tops of the trees. We could see individual houses. You look over to your left and you could see the freeway and you can make out individual cars. Hell, you might be able to make out their license plate numbers from here. We are rapidly approaching the runway that is high school football in the Ohio Valley. We couldn't be more excited about that, as we've said multiple times so far. But that leads us to scrimmage weekend. Like, the wheels are about to continue the plane analogy. The wheels are about to hit the ground. You're at that spot where you're like, okay, and boom, we've hit. Right before that, we are at scrimmage weekend. A lot of teams had scrimmages. What do you think of scrimmage weekend? Do you think they hold a lot of weight? Do you like the matchups that you see between different teams? Do you go to any scrimmages? How did your hometown team fare in its local scrimmage over this past weekend? Friday, some scrimmages. Saturday, some scrimmages. I think we can look at this. If you're a fan, as I am, of the college football game, we get excited every April about those spring games. But then we kind of got to remind ourselves, wait a second, even if you're a pro fan, we talk about the preseason that we're in the middle of in the NFL. I think you got to take everything with a little bit of a grain of salt. But one of the things that is for sure is you do see a lot of talent. You can't pass that up, whether it's a scrimmage environment or a game environment. And if they have great character, it could be a classroom environment. But great talent like Steubenville running back Landon Crozier, he can shine in a scrimmage, and you can be confident that he'll shine under the lights when Indian Valley comes to town. He's going to be providing a lot of good talent for Steubenville in their backfield this season. Landon Crozier, the junior running back for Steubenville. Those are one of the things that popped over the weekend in scrimmages when they played Warren G. Harding. We talked about matchups, and I think this is a good opportunity to see some teams get together on the field that don't normally get together, such as Harrison Central and Shenandoah. That's a series that's tied all time. They haven't played since 2008. I think that would be a great game if they played this season. As with Martins Ferry and Barnesville, we almost did a segment before the season of hypothetical matchups that aren't happening, but we thought could be great games and great matchups this season. And one of those would have been Martins Ferry and Barnesville. We got to see, in a scrimmage environment, we got to see the purple and white and the red and green. Lots of purple on tonight's show. I wonder why. But we got to see those on the same field together in a scrimmage environment. We talked about how Ferry and Edison this season will be kind of like a first meeting type of game because they haven't played in so long. I think it was like 2014. Well, Ferry and Barnesville haven't played since 1997. And Ferry leads the all-time series. They played 6 years in a row in the mid-90s. Ferry leads that series 5-1. But if they got on the field today, man, I feel like that could be a really close game. You take a step back 2 years ago, though, and I think Barnesville probably would have, I don't want to say easily, but they would have had their way with the Purple Riders. But I think with both of those programs and where they are today, that would be a great game. So we're super thrilled to see those two teams in a scrimmage environment, no matter how much weight it holds. St. Clairsville and Edison had a scrimmage, and some rumors floating around say that Edison may have outperformed St. Clairsville. How could they? St. Clairsville's a better team than Edison. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. But in St. Clairsville's defense, that's the position I'm going to take on this. This is why we've got so many papers around here. St. Clairsville's got a difficult trip up to Norwayne in week 1. And as far as the 25 team, the only film that Norwayne will have on St. Clairsville is this scrimmage against Edison. So do you really think St. Clairsville really emptied their playbook against Edison? Do you think if they have some studs that they know are going to do well for them in the fall, do you think they got all the reps with the ones? That's where I'm at with this. I don't think that's where I think these scrimmages don't hold a ton of weight because those are the things that you have to think about. A lot of these teams have big week 1 games. And so why would you throw all your chips on the table? Why would you pull out all the stops in a scrimmage environment and put that on film for your opponent to see? So in St. Clairsville's defense, I really don't think that the fact that they may not have played as well as Edison in the scrimmage, I don't think that's an indictment on where that program is or the talent level or really anything because, frankly, they've got, and this is no shot at Edison. I think Edison's going to have a really good team this season, but I think St. Clairsville's got bigger fish to fry when they go to Norwayne in week 1. So we're really glad that we got some scrimmages in the books and some teams put some things that they've been working on all summer. They actually put that in action on grass, hopefully, maybe turf. Really nice new beautiful turf at Caldwell as well. But grass or turf, we got football over the weekend, so that kind of scratched a little bit of an itch, partially for a lot of us that are just dying for football around here, and good football. Speaking of good football, some would say there is no better football than Purple Rider football. Their words, not ours, but we were joined by the head man of the Purple Riders, Justin Kropka, takes us inside the huddle on Hometown Huddle. Here's his conversation. Martins Ferry Purple Riders head coach Justin Kropka. Coach, thanks for your time and welcome inside the huddle. Glad to have you on.
Oh, glad to be here. I owe a couple favors to DJ. I buy his silence sometimes, so I'm glad to do it.
You brought the helmet. Is this correct? This is one of the first times you guys had a white helmet a few years ago. You guys had purple the entire history of the school, though, for a long time, right?
No, actually, we were white. And
okay.
They switched it to purple, I think, a couple years before I got there, and I kind of wanted to go back to the white helmet.
Yeah, I think it looks great. It's super clean, and we've actually got something. We've got something for you to take with you as a gift from us.
Oh, well, thank you, Harco Media. I've heard that floating around sometimes. I know the guy. So, yeah, absolutely. I'll wear that. That's a nice hat. Thank you.
You wear that to practice.
Yeah.
Wanted to talk. You're obviously a little bit of a homecoming for you. We're in Caddis. You've got an extensive coaching career. Obviously, currently at Martins Ferry. You were a player there, an assistant there under Dave Bruni. Then you led a successful tenure at Harrison Central, took them to several playoff appearances, had some time at Wheeling U under Zach Bruni. 1 year at John Marshall, and now you're back home at Martins Ferry. Talk to me a little bit about your coaching journey and what the years have provided for you.
Well, I think my coaching journey really starts as a player. You know, I was fortunate enough to grow up in Martins Ferry, where my great-grandfather played, my grandfather played, my uncles played, I played. Now, obviously, my son will be the 5th generation to play there. So you don't really realize it when you're a kid because that's all you know.
Sure.
In high school, all 3 coaches I played for, football, basketball, and track, are all in the Hall of Fame. So I was super fortunate to just have great coaches the whole time I was in school from the time I was a little guy. So, I played through Ferry, had a good career at Ferry, not a great one. Just, I was probably above average high school football player and was fortunate enough to be able to go on and play college at Bethany, and was there 3 years, probably a below average college player, but met some great people and had some great experiences there playing college ball. And one of the reasons I got into coaching was my college position coach. Danny Taka, who I owe a lot to. He asked me what my major was. I think I was a sophomore or junior, and I told him at econ I was going to be Gordon Gekko and go to Wall Street. I'd have probably been one of them guys who jumped off the bridge in '08, but either way, that's what I was going to do. And he shook his head. He said, "Krop, you're a coach." Yeah. He said, "You're a coach. I don't know why you would want to do anything else." And that kind of took me back a little bit. But he said, you play 6 plays a game and you watch more film than anybody on the team. So,
I wanted to get into that. Were you one of those players who was always kind of one of the smarter players? You may not have been on the field the entire time, and you always watched the most film. You always knew the plays better than anybody. Did that describe you in college?
Yeah, I was, in college, I was the fourth receiver and punt returner. So, depending on the game, my playing time was limited, but I was always interested in the game. Actually, my first college football game, they left me home because you had to make the travel list. And I didn't make it. You talk about something that burns in you the rest of your life. Your team's playing, and
I'm sure you practiced hard that next week.
Yeah, and so when the bus got home, and actually the guy I was telling you about, Coach Taka, I went immediately to his office when the bus got there. I said, I can't do that ever again. What do I got to do? And he said, learn every position. He said, be a holder, be a punt returner, be whatever you got to be. He said, make us not be able to leave without you. And so that's what I did. I buried myself in the film. I learned how to hold. I learned how to return punts, which was actually the way I got on the field as a sophomore. I was the backup everything. So taking me was like taking 5 guys. Right. So I was very fortunate to have that happen, really. And so it caused me to learn everything, learn how to do everything. And little did I know down the road that would be beneficial. But then the mill went on strike in '97. And both my parents worked for Wheeling Pittsburgh Steel. So I wasn't able to go back to Bethany. I was still training down there because I'd planned to go back, for my senior year, even if it was a belated senior year at Bethany. And Coach Bruni, I was down working out with the team, and he said, well, if you're going to be home, why don't you go down and help our, freshman wide receivers? And I did that for about 2 days, and I said, yep, that's whatever spark lights in you. I knew that's what I wanted to do, and that's kind of where I guided myself for the rest of my life. Really, it became my life's passion. And so I was fortunate for all those things to have happen. I figured, if my college position coach thought I ought to be a coach, and then Coach Bruni thought I ought to be a coach, well, maybe I was missing something. And as soon as I did it, I knew that's what I wanted to do. And so when I got home, I started coaching freshman football at Martins Ferry. Loved it, loved every second of it. And eventually I moved up the ranks. I also coached junior high basketball and track, and I love that too. And I kind of just worked my way up the ranks at Martins Ferry and became a varsity assistant. And we went on a state run there at Martins Ferry.
04?
In 04,
yeah.
Yep. Cardinal Mooney knocked us out there in the Final Four. But then I was a young coach, and actually that summer we had a 7-on-7 with Harrison Central.
Okay.
And I had heard that Coach Poe was talking about leaving and going back to Buckeye Local. And I told some of the other assistants on the way home from that 7-on-7, it was right there at Westgate.
Uh-huh.
And I said, if that job opens, I might be interested in that, and I might apply for it. And, nobody ever thought I'd leave. Again, we were generations deep in Martins Ferry. Nobody ever thought I'd leave, because they were all like, okay, whatever. So come to, fast forward to March of 05, Coach Poblish leaves and goes back to Buckeye Local. I was 26 years old, maybe 27. And the job came in, and I applied for it. And really, I didn't think I had any chance of getting that job.
Yeah.
I was, I'd only been a varsity coach for 3 or 4 years. I was young. But I applied for it, got the interview. Thought I had a good interview. I thought I was very prepared for it. And I'll never forget, it was snow days. As I go on in this, snow days, you'll find out have become a weirdly important part of my coaching career. So we had a snow day, and I got the phone call, hey, we're going to offer you the job. And that's when my world started spinning. I had, I wasn't sure I was ready. I wasn't sure, but I knew you can't pass up a head coaching job at, 27 years old. And I knew the challenges that were here. And, they'd never had a winning season. They'd struggled. I think they were 9-51 or something like that all time when I got here. And so I knew what was coming, but I couldn't pass it up. And I was excited. And, I went in full bore. And it worked out. Fortunately, it could have gone either way. It was an awful big risk at that age.
Well, looking back, it was a smart decision not only by the Huskies, but also you. I mean, you ended up leaving there with 70-plus wins. Really great tenure, and took them to the first playoff appearance. And I think you had 3 playoff runs in total, several winning seasons, and really did a great job there. After Harrison Central, you stepped down and took a position at Wheeling U. That led you to John Marshall, which then led you back to Martins Ferry. Talk a little bit about the openings and how those things came to be and what your mindset was heading into those positions.
Well, to be honest with you, I never wanted to leave Harrison Central. I loved it here. I fell in love with the people, fell in love with the kids. We had done so much. When I got here, they were going to condemn the stadium. So to watch, and a lot of people.
You couldn't imagine that now, by the way.
Right. It's amazing. But a lot of people put a lot of work in to get this for the kids of Harrison County. What they have now is incredible, but it took a decade or more of a lot of people rowing the boat. And to watch that come to fruition is one of the greatest prides of my life. And I got one season on that field that I sold my soul for. And it was fantastic. But at the point, we had built a house in Coleraine, and I was starting to having to pick between my kids' things,
sure,
or Harrison stuff.
They were going to Ferry the whole time, weren't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
And anyone in the county will tell you, I was at everything. I was at every Little League baseball game. I wanted to get to know the kids and the parents, because it's hard at a consolidation county-wide school to get kids to come out for football.
Sure.
So some of them live an hour away from the school. So, I wanted to get to know all the kids, all the parents, all the things, every, like I said, Little League basketball game, Biddy League football game, little kid basketball game, I was at. And I was meeting the parents, and I think that paid dividends. We planted seeds down the road, and I started that early, and I thought that paid dividends for us down the road. And but I had to stop doing that stuff, and I felt like I wasn't given what I gave to Harrison Central, and I wasn't given what I should have been given to my kids. You know, so it was heartbreaking to leave here. This will always be my baby. But I felt like it was in a much better place than when I arrived. I felt like I did what I needed to do at Harrison, so I took a job back at Bridgeport. Coach Bruni had gotten the head job at Wheeling U, and he was rebuilding, and I had a little bit of experience with that.
Sure.
Rebuilding a program. So he asked me to come coach. I coached safeties there for 4 years and loved it. I loved every second of it. It was kind of nice not being the guy, to just be able to go and get close with the kids and have fun. I had great kids there. And again, to watch that program grow as it has and have the success it's had is I'm very proud of that, and proud of Coach Bruni and the guys over there that have built it from the ground up. And
I'm sure coaching safeties, that probably took you back to the days when you fell in love with coaching, when it's kind of one-on-one and you're teaching them guys how to backpedal the right way. And took you back to coaching receivers at Ferry.
Yeah, it was nice. It was, like I said, it was a nice break from having to be the guy, make all the decisions and all that stuff. So that was fantastic. And it kind of reignited my love of football, because sometimes when you're a head coach for a long time, it wears on you, So that opens. I came to that, and then my college roommate was actually an administrator at John Marshall.
Okay.
And he called me. He said, hey, our job's opening. We need some help here. I think we need some things that need to be fixed at John Marshall. Would you come? And I debated it for a while, but eventually I came to the decision, what the heck, I'll get back in. And
sure.
I was able to get a great staff there with Coach Caesar and Coach Stiles and Coach Fitch from Martins Ferry, and Austin Yawkey was a young coach. at JM then, and we had a great season, and really we were returning 19 starters for the next year. So I was really excited about that next season coming up because the kids knew the system, and and then the Martins Ferry job opened, and I had told people for years, I would never take that job. You lose too many friends. Sure. When you're that guy at Martins Ferry, especially at Martins Ferry, as much as I love it, and I was very concerned, and the program wasn't in a real good situation. I think they dressed 22 for the Belair game that year, and Chaz Yoder's as Martins Ferry as it gets. So sure. if he was struggling getting numbers, why wouldn't anybody else? So when he took the principal's job, and that job opened officially, I got a phone call and I declined. I was like, I don't think it's the right time, or I had a lot of concerns coming up, and got one more phone call from a different person, and I said, I still don't. And then, funny, another snow day. It was snowing really bad, and I get this bang on my door, shook the whole house, and I got up. I was like, "Who the hell's coming here right now?" And Coach Bruni was at my back door. I thought he got stuck.
Oh wow!
I thought he got stuck because his sister lives right out by me, and I opened the door. I said,
"You still live in Coleraine at this point?"
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And I said, "Hey, Coach," I said, "Did you get stuck or something? I'll help get you out. I have a truck, And he said, "No." I said, "Well, just come in." He was like, "No, I'll stay right here." And he looked me dead in the eye, and that's my coach, who's like a second father to me.
Sure.
And he said, "If you don't come home, I'm not sure Martins Ferry is going to have a football team." He said, "If you can live with that, okay." And walked right off my back porch.
Wow.
And I was like, "Oh man,
yeah.
What do you do?" So I called my son down, who also had a snow day and was home. And I said, "Well, what do you think?" He said, "Dad, I want to stay at Martins Ferry. I want you to come back. Why don't you be our coach?" So I called Coach Bruni, said, "Give me a week to find out if I could get, the staff I want." And God bless Martins Ferry, they gave me carte blanche to go get who I needed and build a great staff, not only varsity staff, but had a great junior high staff. Called in some favors. People ask me why it was a little quicker rebuild at Martins Ferry. Well, at Harrison, we didn't have any of the infrastructure. Any of the infrastructure we had, we had to build it.
Right. They've only been to school for 6 years.
When I got here, we didn't have a weight room. We didn't have, our field was a mess. We didn't have facilities. We had, our it was tough to get a staff together because not a lot of people were coaches in the school. So it took me a little bit longer to get it where I wanted here. But at Ferry, everything was there. The facilities were there. I knew everybody. When I got to Harrison, I knew like 3 people in Harrison County. So I knew people. I was able to get people, and I knew all the parents of the kids because they were all my kids' age. So I was able to go door to door, literally. I got every male in the district, went door to door, and ended up with 44 kids that first year, and those kids really bought in. And, they were kind of the foundation, much like my first group at Harrison. My first group of seniors laid the foundation to what, that we built the house on. Sure. And that was the same thing at Martins Ferry, and it just happened quicker at Martins Ferry because there were a lot more advantages when I came to Martins Ferry than there were at Harrison Central. So, I normally try to get 5 years before I feel like it's where I wanted it to be. It happened in 3 at Martins Ferry just because of, the situation was better.
Yeah. Well, you go from 4 wins to 5 wins, and then boom, 10 wins last season. Now you're in the midst of, you're kind of winding down the offseason, and I'm sure in your mind and in your players' mind, I hope in your players' minds, I mean, it's season mode pretty soon. You guys are going to start practice, and you guys are going to be preparing for week 1 before you know it. Talk to me a little bit about how this offseason has gone. And I mean, I don't really like to call it an offseason because you're working the entire year. But talk to me about that. And you're replacing Reese, Williams, Ludoff, that kind of trio of players. You'll have a lot of production to replace. Talk to me about how you plan to go about doing that.
Well, any great program is built on your off season. We start the Monday after Thanksgiving, hell or high water, and we get in that weight room, and that's something that that I've always stressed, because that was stressed to me, and I know what a difference that can make, and how good that is for team building. And, there's an old saying that was pounded into my head. It's a Vince Lombardi saying, but in my mind, it'll always be a Coach Bruni saying, the harder you work, the harder it is to surrender. And that's true. The more kids have invested in it, the harder they're going to play, the longer they're going to play, the more they care about, Martins Ferry football. And so we get in there and we work really hard. That's one of the staples of kind of any team I've ever coached, is I never want to get outworked as a player, as a coach, whatever. We're going to outwork you. There's nobody that's going to outwork us. So got in there, and we've had a fantastic, probably the best offseason I've ever had as a coach. But these were the guys that were freshmen when I took over, so we didn't have to sell them. They get it. They're part of that culture that we built there, and it's been more player-led this year, and my best teams have all been player-led.
Yeah.
When the players buy in, and I don't have to say it, they say it. It's been a great offseason. Obviously, we're replacing, for the last 3 years, probably 85% of our offense with those three guys. And what people forget is both those guys were, all-state caliber defenders.
Sure.
So there's a lot to replace there. I was glad, those guys stuck by us. Those were the three houses I visited first when I got the job. I was like, look, if you stick, I promise you, we're going to be okay. And fortunately, I had the resume by that point to back it up. It was a little harder sell with Harrison.
Yeah.
I didn't have anything, but and I knew them all since they were little, and I knew their families. So I said, if you stick, by the time you graduate, we're gonna be good. And they did, and I'll forever be grateful to those three, because I'm not sure how many games we win, especially those first 2 years without them. So I was glad they went out the way they went out. Getting in, they got into playoffs as juniors and won a road playoff game as seniors, and really had a fan, and gave Poland everything they could handle in the second round. So I was really, really happy for those guys. As far as replacing them goes, I don't think you replace those guys.
Sure.
I think you got to moneyball it and replace them in the aggregate. Like you don't replace Alex Reese at tight end or defensive end. So we feel like we got a pretty good tight end, high school tight end, and we feel like we probably got a pretty good defensive end. So we're kind of replacing him with two guys. Same thing with Tevin Williams on offense, and with Ludi on defense. I mean, we feel like we got a really good sophomore safety who I think is going to be recruitable someday. Obviously, Williams on offense, we feel like we got a pretty good running back, Joaquin Cox, who we think has a chance to be pretty special. So we're replacing those guys with talent, and that's what you got to do in a program. Obviously, replacing a 4-year starter at quarterback's tough, but when you replace him with a kid that's been around the program since he could take steps,
sure.
Normally you have to cut down your offense a little bit, but we don't have to do that this year with Colby, because he knows that offense probably as well as I do.
Sure.
So
you didn't read him bedtime stories you read in the playbook.
Right. The kid's been watching film with me since he was 6 years old. So we really haven't had the guys. Their replacements are players we're very confident in.
Yeah.
So while I think we'll be a little more spread out with how we do things, a little more, those we're not counting on just three guys anymore. So I think that's the depth of the program that you build over years and years and years.
Well, Mike Leach would have told you that true balance in any team is not 50% run, 50% pass, but how many different different players do defenders have to key in on?
Right.
Speaking of keying in on, there's a couple games on your schedule that I can circle. You have to circle every game. Mm-hmm. I could circle the Edison game, the Malvern game, the Bel Air game, obviously for Sparky. And when I look at those games, I see a lot of games that could be close games. Obviously, you're hoping to do your part in making sure those are wins on your schedule. But I look at those as kind of games that the outsiders in the Valley will be looking at as potentially close games. Talk to us a little bit about what you've seen from all of those teams and how you expect to prepare for them.
Yeah, I think, we go through a 3-game stretch where we play some really good teams, week 2, 3, and 4. Malvern, obviously, traditionally, they were in the regional finals last year. They're always good, always have tough kids, well coached, so that's going to be a challenge for us. And then week 3, we take a 4-hour bus trip to Independence, who's been in the Final Four in West Virginia the last 4 years, and they've won 2 state titles in that time. So they're a really good team, really good program. They have 21 starters returning, so that's going to be a difficult task, especially on the road. Edison, who we thought was going to be one of the best teams in the Valley this year, before we signed them.
Yeah.
So we signed them. Coach
They've got a lot
Collop,
coming back, I think.
they're loaded. Coach Collop, he did a great job there and kind of handed off to Coach Pirro, who I have a lot of respect for that family. That's a coaching family, so I don't think that job will be too much for him. And then you look at the back end of the schedule. You got Wheeling Central and Bel Air, and obviously those are two huge games. So it's definitely an upgrade in schedule over what we've been the last couple of years. But I think we're ready for that, and it's going to come down, in my opinion, to health. I mean, you got to control everything that you can control. You can't control that in order to have, like last year, the main thing was we stayed healthy.
Yeah.
We didn't lose any of those guys. We lose one of the three guys you were talking about. I don't think we win 10 games last year, or a playoff game. I think we needed everybody. That playoff game was one of the best games I've been involved in my career. It came down to the last play of the game, So I think if we were missing any of those guys,
right,
I don't think we win that game. So I think we've done what we've needed to do. And even so far, since we've started practicing, we've had great practices. I think we've taken care of what we need to take care of. If we keep doing that, and then let the dice roll where they may. But if we stay healthy, I think we got a chance to win every game on our schedule. And but we're all in the Valley at this point. We're all one or two injuries away from really struggling. So
yeah,
we'll see how that goes.
Talk about winning games. I wanted to ask not only you, but every coach we talked to, if you had to pick and tell me what is the one thing that you think most often decides a high school football game, particularly in this area. Could be health, could be talent, could be depth, could be any of those things. What would you say most often is the deciding factor between win or lose on a Friday night?
Well, if you're talking about a single game, honestly, it's talent.
Okay.
If you're talking about winning one game, good players have made me look smart for 20 years. I've been doing this. I'm a lot smarter with good players than I am with average ones. And but if you're talking about long-term winning, I think that comes down to your program and culture. I think all the things you do in the off season and your practices and how you set your practice plans up and doing all that stuff, I think it's, in my opinion, it's worth one game a year. Now, that might not be that big a deal for a single season, but if you line that up over 20, 30 years, it becomes a big deal. Maybe you don't make the playoffs and if you don't have that game. Maybe that game takes you from 9-1 to 10-0. Maybe that game takes you from 4-6 to 5-5.
Right.
But if you have the right culture and build the program the right way, I think you add one win a year and subtract one loss a year. And I think that was Coach Bruni's calling card at Martins Ferry. He always got the best out of the average players because we worked people and our culture was great. And I think that was worth one game a year. But if you're talking about just one game on one game, obviously play calling has something to do with that and game planning. But it's talent. It's most games were decided 19 years ago when people moved into a town.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I think, talent also is not just the fast receiver that can catch a go ball and take it to the house for 50 yards. Talent's also the athletic guard that can pull around and really get a hit on somebody, a linebacker trying to fill the B gap. You talked about culture just a moment ago. I wanted to ask you about culture and leadership, and I wanted to have you kind of from the neck up build the perfect football player as far as the intangibles and what qualities somebody should possess to be a successful player in your program or any program.
Well, I think that's probably something in my mind that I excel at is building a program, building a culture. I've been fortunate that, again, going back to the way I cut my teeth as a player and a coach, I think a great winning culture was kind of beat into me no matter what sport I was in. So talking about head, and a lot of that, honestly, comes from mom and dad. I think your job as a coach is to find those and bring it out of them. And I give a great example. Nick Pellegrin, who I coached here, he would have been good no matter what culture you put him in. He was just a great kid, great athlete, played. But what you got to do is get those kids that are on the fence that could go either way to buy into your culture. So from the neck up, I think you need commitment. I think you need selflessness. No job's too small for me. We don't care who gets the credit. We're all going to do our job. That's part of the culture. Character, kind of where you're coming from. What do you have? The work ethic? Do you have all those things? And if you get that as a coach, your job is to, when they have those traits, to kind of bring it out of them. And guys that are kind of on the fence, to have more guys with those traits, to bring those guys to your side. And I think that's a hugely underrated part of what being a head coach is.
I think there's some guys where you look at and you're like, there's no other place I'd rather them be than on this football field.
Right.
And under our leadership. And you play a big part in making sure some of those people are successful in life after football, after high school.
I think so. I've told every team, if all you get out of me is winning football games and how to block and tackle, then I haven't done my job. I hope that, I know in my case, a lot of the things I took from what I learned from Coach Bruni, and again, coming back to that culture, helped me be successful in life. And I think you build that well of, you pour water into that well with every hard thing you do, with every difficult thing you do, with every commitment you make, with every struggle, you build that well, and you can draw on that well for the rest of your life. And I think that's what makes high school sports great, whatever sport you're coaching. It's why I'm addicted to that high school, football or sports or whatever, because at that age, you still have a chance to teach those kids that. Yeah. And you still have a chance to change their lives. And I think if you teach them that, and you make them go through the doubles, and you make them go through running until they're ready to puke, and they can always draw on that. Well, hey, this isn't as tough as that. Coach Kropka was a lot harder on me than my boss.
Sure,
I can do this. And I think that's something that a lot of kids now, if they're not in sports, I think we've made the world a very easy place. It's easy to be lazy now. It's easy to be, to have a bad attitude now. But if you can learn those things from high school sports, no matter how good a player you are, if you're the best player on the team or the worst, you can take that from our program. And I think we've done a really good job of that over the years of allowing kids to be successful after they get done playing for us.
I'm going to ask you about some stories. You oftentimes share the sidelines with officials. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to know if there's any stories that you think are worth telling about your interactions with officials on the sidelines, negative or positive, whichever way you want to go.
I think officiating might be a worse job than being a head coach.
I said that on the show not long ago.
So, I think we're fortunate in the Valley where I think we have a lot of guys that have done it a long time and are trying to do the right thing. They're not trying. They're not out there to say, look at me. They're out there to try to do the right thing, and they're going to miss stuff and they're going to miss calls. And as a coach, you're going to get upset because that's your life. That's in some cases, that's your livelihood, they're messing with out there. So, but I think our officials are as prepared as they could be. And I had a guy, I'm not going to mention any names. He missed a big call for us. He missed a really big call. And
then you guys went and fist fought in the parking lot.
and it changed the course of the game, really. And it was a big game. And he came to me after, like the Monday after, he called me and he said, Coach, I'm sorry I missed that call. And I really have a lot of respect for guys that are able to do that.
Sure.
And I think I'm pretty easy on officials on Friday nights. I don't complain very much unless, like I said, it's egregious or, it's a game-changing kind of deal. But
and you don't want your players to pick up that attitude either. I see a lot of coaches who every down they're arguing with the officials, and then you start to see the players on the field, and they think that they could tell the officials they missed a holding call or they missed a call here or there. I think another thing to touch on is kind of like when you were going to clean your room, but then your mom tells you to clean your room, now you don't want to.
Right.
If you're an official, it's easier, I think, to admit when you're wrong when you wouldn't have so many people in the stands telling you that you're wrong and you missed a call.
Right.
Then all of a sudden, everybody's telling you you're wrong. You kind of have a pridefulness, and you're like, well, no, I made the right call. I really think that's a respectful trait when an official is still able to give you a call the Monday after and admit he was.
And I was able to tell him, look, I made more bad calls that night than you did, dude. So after the heat of the battle wears down, you calm down a little bit. And it's nice. I'm on some committees with officials, and I think that's helped me as far as the respect I have for them because I know they're putting work into.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you a couple more things before we let you go here. What's the best, other than Harrison, John Marshall, or Ferry, what's the best atmosphere, stadium environment that you've been to, experienced, or coached in the Ohio Valley?
There's been a lot of them. We're fortunate around here that football still matters.
Yes.
And it's a town thing. We're small towns, and so almost every place I've been has been tremendous in the OVAC as far as the atmosphere. Teams I've played, but one that's not in the OVAC that really sticks out was Ridgewood. Every time I go there, that's a great environment to play. The people still really get into it. Again, another small town. If you're talking about outside kind of the Ohio Valley, they really do a great job out there creating a fantastic atmosphere. And they beat us I think they beat us in overtime, maybe in the playoffs, or maybe a last second kind of deal in the playoffs a couple years ago. But that was a fantastic atmosphere to play in.
Last question we have for you. Somebody might be driving through on, Zane Highway there in Martins Ferry. They might be getting off Route 7, hopping on Hanover Street. Maybe they take 647 up to Mount Pleasant. But if they were to stop in Ferry, where's the best burger in Martins Ferry?
Well, that's tough. I would say the Brewworks has a great burger. I stop there probably at least once a week and have lunch. But there's so many great places there, so many good pizza places there too.
Yeah.
There's really not a bad restaurant in Martins Ferry. That's even Cripe, even the Subway there has great food. So Martins Ferry's got a lot of great restaurants, a lot of great stuff. But as far as where I go, it's kind of I don't know if it's location or the food or whatever, but Belmont Brew Works has good burgers.
Love it there. Martins Ferry has great restaurants. Martins Ferry has great football. They've got a great football coach. Coach Kropka, thanks for your time, and we appreciate you.
Well, thanks for having me anytime.
All right, that's Coach Krop. Good stuff as always. He's always got a lot of good things to say, and he told us before we sat down that he could talk ball for hours, probably days, and I feel like a lot of us could do the same thing. And he had a really good balance of talking about his upcoming season, the 25 group, as well as his journey throughout his coaching, throughout his coaching journey, and he did great for us, and we really appreciate the conversation. We hope you enjoyed the conversation that we had with Justin Kropka as well. I wanted to take a look. I want to take a sip real quick before I do so. This is my warning for the podcast folks that I'm going to leave them hanging here for a second. Great stuff in the glass tonight. Unfortunately, they don't pay me to tell you what it is, but I wish I could. It's good. It's supposed to be good for you too. I don't know about that, but we'll see. Martins Ferry, as we look ahead at their 25 team, Coach Krop didn't touch on that a ton. That was kind of by design, but I wanted to take a look at some of their games. Week 2 on August 29th, they host the Malvern Hornets. Malvern's not an easy team. I think that's my overall thoughts to keep it brief on that game. That's a game that I think Martins Ferry should win, but they shouldn't overlook. They're going to really have to make sure that they are, because Malvern's a team, and the folks down the road know this too. If you don't bring your A game, they could beat you. Even though they're a Division 7 school, they've done well in Division 7. So Malvern, not a game that the Purple Riders can overlook. But Martins Ferry also goes at Independence. They've got the Edison game that we've talked about. Hearing some things since we did the Martins Ferry Edison segment. That's now a game, as we've heard some things from some reliable people. That's a game that I would expect Martins Ferry to win, but you never know. I also think personally that Edison's going to have a really good group this year. So I think similarly, Martins Ferry is going to have to bring their A game. They definitely can't play a bad game and beat the Wildcats of Edison. They do get them at home. But Martins Ferry goes at Independence and they go at Lucas, two teams that Coach Krop actually played and scheduled when he was at Harrison Central. So I think that's neat that he's keeping those. You know, he's got an eye for talent outside of the Ohio Valley and where some good programs are. So keeping those games alive. They host Brownsville. They host Buckeye Local. They host Cambridge. There's a reason. There's not much more to say about those games, candidly. They do go on October 16th. That's a Thursday night. They go at Wheeling Central. That game's not easy. It's one of those things, just to preface here, I think Martins Ferry is going to be really good this year. And not just because I talked with their head coach for a while. I mean, from everybody that we've talked to, I think Martins Ferry is going to be really good. Can they improve on that 10-2 record? We'll see. Can they get 11 wins? Can they get a neutral site game? They're going to have to get past Malvern, as we said, Edison, and Wheeling Central. Again, they're going to have to play well to win that game. And Bel Air is a game that on paper, on this stuff, You would think Martins Ferry should win that Bel Air game. They've won pretty convincingly the last couple of years, at least last year. But I'll be the first to remind you that we don't play the game on this stuff. We play the game on grass, as it'll be at Nelson Field, under the lights on a Friday night on October 24th. That'll be a great atmosphere. I don't want to bring up any past pain, but I'm only doing so because I share that with you. We all remember the Ohio State-Michigan game this past year, and that could be a similar, I'm not saying Bel Air's going to win the game, but I think Martins Ferry could walk into that thing with a really good record, expect to win. Bel Air might not have a great record heading into that game, but it's a rivalry game. All of that stuff goes out the window, and it's solely what happens from snap to whistle between the lines on that grass. And if you're Martins Ferry and you overlook that game, that's a good way to lose in an upset fashion in a rivalry game. But again, a game that I think that they can handle pretty well. So Martins Ferry, we're really interested to see what they can do in 2025. Hey, quick timeout, little stoppage in the action. I wanted to ask you, are you following the page? Are you liking the videos? Subscribed on YouTube? 5 stars on the podcast format? If not, that's all we ask of you, and we will continue to strive to give you great quality content week in and week out. All we need you to do in return is tap a button on your cell phone or on your laptop or wherever you may be. That helps us out immensely. That helps us deliver great content to you, and there's no strings attached, no expense to you. You hit the button, you go on with your day. That's all we ask of you. We hope you enjoy the content, and with that, back to the show. I've got a couple more things to talk to you about tonight. These are stories that aren't new by any means, and you may have already formulated your opinion on them. So have I. But we just wanted to shine some light on these things because we think they're relevant to the discussion when it comes to Ohio Valley athletics, high school athletics. So the first thing that we'll touch on is Beallsville doesn't have a high school anymore. The high school shut down. The Board of Education for Switzerland of Ohio School District voted on that over the summer. Beallsville won't have a high school anymore, and I want to take a trip back in time and kind of look at how and why this happened. I don't think it's complicated. I really don't even have a take on this, but first of all, you look at the trends of population in the Ohio Valley as a whole. They've kind of been on the decline ever since mid to late 20th century, and so that definitely affects a community like Beallsville. You think of an industry like coal leaving that town and putting a lot of families out of work unless they go elsewhere. And so that's what happened. So that put the town down in terms of population, frankly. So naturally, you don't have as many kids going to the school. In the mid-2000s, that was kind of a town that still had good football and still had a sense of pride about them in their local high school and their Blue Devils. And you had good football down there. And then in 2013, the enrollment got so low and got to a point where the school district wanted to shut the school down. And you thought that's probably what was going to happen. Some folks thought that's probably the best thing that could happen. But there was such a sense of pride in that school that they fought it, and they stayed open for another, 11 or 12 years. But what happened from that point on is that scared away some families. Naturally, you think that the school that your kid goes to is in jeopardy of even being open, so you want to get out ahead of this thing and send your kid to Barnesville, send your kid to Monroe Central or River. Monroe Central and River, the latter two being in the same district. So that really took a toll on the enrollment of the high school, the population within the hallways, and on the sidelines as well. And that's reflected in the football records over the last 11 or 12 years. And so this has been something that's been kind of brewing for a while. So that's really, from what we understand, that was kind of the kicker, was that 2013 threat to shut the school down by the school board. And so now that's official, and those students will go to either River, Monroe Central, or Barnesville. And look, there's no more impact on Beallsville because it doesn't exist. I think the community, I think it's unfortunate for them because they'll miss out on those things that we cherish, those high school football Friday nights. But I think of athletically, what kind of additions do Barnesville, River, and Monroe Central pick up? Do they get a stud at wide receiver? Beallsville may not have been, and this is typical of a lot of small schools, they may not have been huge on the offense or defensive lines, but every school has skill position players, and so I think you could see some of those affect Barnesville or Monroe Central or River, all the three schools that we've talked about. So that's my thoughts. There are really not any thoughts on Beallsville shutting down. We feel for the community. They won't have those high school football Friday nights, but something that's been kind of brewing, whether under the surface or not, for several years. So sad to see football and all the other sports go in regards to Beallsville. Now we'll go up north and talk about Weirton Madonna. They are still in good shape as far as high school is concerned, but they won't be fielding a team in 2025. I think I was in Moundsville when I heard this story. I was doing an Ironman game, and the talk instantly was, is it 1 year? Is it going to last more than 1 year? Do they just need a year to get their feet back underneath of them? Which means, do they have enough players to want to play football at that school? Or is it going to be something that lasts a long time? Weirdly, I thought, okay, say they do get enough people that come back, enough students that want to play football in, let's say, 26 or 27. I'm thinking about the finances of the whole thing. And I'm like, do they miss out on too much money in 25 by not having a team to the point where they can't pay for anything in 26 or 27? And we don't know how the finance of that school works because it is a private school. We have no knowledge of what kind of money is going into it, how any of that works. For all we know, they could have no money. For all we know, they could have somebody handing them $200,000 a year. And that's not something that's foreign to the Ohio Valley when it comes to private schools. But we have no idea how any of that works for Weirton Madonna, so it's kind of irrelevant, the finances of the whole thing. But it's even more irrelevant when you hear that they're not going to have the players to field a football team anyway in the coming years. They're simply not going to have enough guys to safely play the game of football. We talk about depth and attrition and the toll a season takes on you over the course of 10, 11 weeks. And so if they don't have 18 guys, which I think is incredibly low, you at least want to have 22, 25. The smallest teams that I can remember over the last few years have had 25, 30 guys on them. And so to hear that their numbers were so low at the end of last season was alarming. And to hear that they can't get back to those numbers in the upcoming season, it makes sense that they won't field a football team. And I think they're going to be okay because they're going to have kids that are going to be interested in playing soccer up there. So they're going to be okay in that regard. But I think it's one of those things where it's just not meant to be. And those folks realized that. Whether the situation was pretty or not, they realized that. And so they axed the football program. Again, whether for right or for wrong, if you have 12 guys that are going to play football, I think that's the right thing to do. And from what we're hearing, they're not going to have much more than that are going to be able and willing to play football in the years to come. So a return to, the Blue Dons, a return to Weirton Madonna football, I don't think is imminent. I think that is something that's going to be pretty indefinite in the future years. No football for Weirton Madonna. That's all we've got for Hometown Huddle. We thank you so much if you've made it to this point in the show. Next week, if you can believe it or not, it's like Christmas. I hope I'm not the only one that feels this way. It's like Christmas. We've got week 1 games to talk about. St. Clairsville, Norway will be a chunk of the conversation next week. Steubenville and Youngstown Ursuline going to have a great game. Let's just look at some schedules. Let's be transparent here. East Liverpool, Carrollton could be a great game. Edison, Shenandoah, Shadyside, and East Palestine. We've got some great games coming up that we'll talk about in week 1. As for August 13th, that's all we have for you tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Again, remember to subscribe and like and comment and all the things that you're always asked to do with any kind of content that you watch. For everybody at Harco Media and everybody involved with Hometown Huddle, I'm Drake Watson saying thanks for watching and have a great night.